have copies of it or can see it. I'm not sure what's on the board behind me. We'll have agenda item number 2, a consideration of items related to reversion. And who's going to begin?
Brief introduction, Mr. Chairman. Honorable members, Mr. Chairman, and honorable members of the Board of Supervisors and Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure to introduce Stephen Peepgrass, who is our outside counsel, and Mr. Jeremy Carroll, who is the outside counsel for the county, who will present a summary of the timeline of how we got here, and then they will proceed directly into your agenda item 3, which is a review of the proposed memorandum of understanding. If Mr. Lyle wants to have any other comments before the outside counsel begin, otherwise we'll proceed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board and Madam Mayor and members of the council, it's great to be with you this evening. I'm Stephen Peepgrass, counsel for the city. And in the spirit of cooperation, we're going to do this together
Likewise,
this
it's
evening.
my pleasure to be here as well. Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors and Council. It's our pleasure to be here to make this presentation to you this evening.
So as Mr. Monday said at the beginning, we'll begin with just a little bit of a recap of how we got where we are tonight. As many of you will recall, December 10th of 2019, the City Council of Martinsville voted in favor of reversion, taking it from being an independent city to becoming a town within and part of Henry County. That of course occurred after a discussion and a feasibility study. Then on January 28th, a formal vote was taken, a resolution passed in support of reversion. And September 18th of 2020, the city filed its reversion papers with the Commission on Local Government, indicating that it did intend to become a town within the county.
The filing by the city initiated the litigation process, if you will, and there is a statutory process for how that plays out. The first step was for the county, as the county surrounding the city that is proposing to revert, to file its response. The county did so on November 30, 2020, with a comprehensive response to the city's filing. Around that same time, the parties began to discuss in good faith ways to resolve this reversion situation in a manner that was acceptable to both governing bodies, began to have those confidential meetings, culminated on April 28th and 29th with a mediation before a former Supreme Court justice who helped guide us to the memorandum of understanding that we're going to review this evening.
So we're going to walk through the memorandum of understanding, paraphrasing the provisions and giving some explanation where that seems appropriate, so that everyone in the audience and all of you can hear and understand the agreement that was reached as part of that confidential mediation process.
But before Stephen begins with paragraph 1, this is a memorandum of understanding that was put together at the end of the mediation. As you will see when we go over the next steps, there will be, and we've already begun to work on, a comprehensive agreement which will embody these terms and flesh out these terms in more detail.
So paragraph 1, the initial paragraph here is simply a preamble stating when we met and the fact that an agreement was reached. Paragraph 1 deals with constitutional officers, and this is part of any reversion proceeding. When the city becomes a town, there won't be the need for the constitutional officers that originally served the city. So the city's constitutional officers will cease to exist. And then we talk about what happens with the office space. The office space occupied by the Commonwealth's attorney will be offered to the county at cost. The term cost is also defined in the agreement. We tried to tie up as much as we possibly could in this MOU, even though it's fairly short. The county will be responsible for providing security for the Commonwealth's attorney's office. Personal property of the treasurer and commissioner of revenue is retained by the city because those functions, similar functions, will still have to be carried out, with the exception of the personal property of the assessor, who will no longer be playing that role. All the other office space associated with those constitutional officers remains titled with the city. But the spaces are being offered at cost to the county should it need it.
The second paragraph addresses courts. Courts, like the constitutional officers upon reversion, will cease in the city, in the town. They will no longer, the city and slash town will no longer offer court services. The court facilities will, as with the municipal building, transfer to the city, but we will have, the county will have the option to continue to use the general district court space and the general district court clerk space going forward at cost as needed while we work on consolidating facilities out in the county. And we will, of course, the county will, of course, have to provide security for the court as it would any other court facility.
With respect to the sheriff's offices and the jail, the city's offering the jail and the metal annex, which sometimes is called the prisoner pods, and the prison farm to the county for use at cost. The sheriffs work together very well. And so we have in here that the sheriffs will work before the reversion to work out the details of this transition, including the use of work release inmate labor, which will be available at cost to the city as well and as part of that.
In paragraph 4, we set about to give a definition to costs. What would the county be paying for the use of these facilities post-reversion? And it will be out-of-pocket costs such as insurance, maintenance, utilities. There is not a rental element. It is just actual costs that are incurred. Because the tenancy is not intended to be prolonged, again, the plan is to consolidate facilities out in the county at some point. There is a provision to provide for pro rata payments for any capital expenditures or long run maintenance that may need to be spent on the jail or the annex or the municipal building, so that that can be pro rata divvied up between the city and county based on that length of tenancy.
With respect to outside agencies that the city participates in, the city will no longer participate in the Department of Social Services or the Department of Health upon reversion. And the interests that the city has in those buildings will be conveyed to the county. The city will continue to contribute to and participate in the governing bodies of the Blue Ridge Regional Library, the Economic Development Commission, the Regional Airport Authority, and the 911 Operations Center.
And the social services and health department, like the constitutional officers, the registrar, other agencies, will no longer exist in the city, whether or not there is an MOU. At the end of reversion, those services go away from the city or the town at the end of reversion. Paragraph 6 deals with some amendments to revenue sharing agreements. The localities agreed to adjust the 2 existing revenue sharing agreements. First, they have agreed to remove the Bryant property from the Commonwealth Crossing revenue sharing agreement. The second adjustment was to the Patriot Center Industrial Park revenue sharing agreement, 2 adjustments to that agreement. First, they have included the Martinsville Industrial Park in that agreement, so it's expanded its application to include that park. And we have also moved up, the localities have agreed to move up the city's the sequencing or the timing of the city's receipt of revenue under the Patriot Center to the effective date of reversion. So as of the effective date of reversion, the city will begin to receive revenue. Revenue will be split, as it always has been under these agreements, 2/3 for the county, 1/3 for the town.
So onto the subject of school properties. As everyone knows, once the city reverts and becomes a town, there won't be a city school system anymore. It will be part of the county school system. As a result, we've dealt with what happens with school properties upon reversion. So Druid Hills Elementary, Patrick Henry Elementary, Clearview Early Learning Center, including the athletic fields and park across the street, and the original old gym of Martinsville Middle School, all will be transferred the properties to the city. Druid Hills Elementary will be used either as a veteran service center or for some other taxable purpose. And then the fields across Ainsley Street will be used either as athletic fields, continue to be used in that way, or as a park, which it is right now. Patrick Henry Elementary and Clearview Early Learning Center must be used for a taxable purpose, meaning some sort of redevelopment if that occurs and contributes to the tax base. If for some reason the city does not pursue redevelopment, then those properties revert to the county.
And the purpose for the taxable use of the land is so that it adds to the tax base of both the town and the county going forward, because that property would be subject to taxation by both localities. For additional school properties, there are some schools that will remain or transition over to the Henry County School Board for its use: Albert Harris Elementary, Martinsville Middle School, and Martinsville High School. And the localities agree that the auditorium at the Martinsville High School will continue to be available for community use. As we understand, it's the largest such facility in the community.
Paragraph 9 takes care of personal property. We already talked about the treasurer and commissioner of revenues property that's retained by the city. Other personal property of the constitutional officers and school board then gets conveyed to the county upon reversion.
Paragraph 10, the continuation of urban services. The town will continue to provide the services that it has provided up to date going forward, and that alleviates any obligation for the county to have to take over those services.
The city has agreed to retain all of its current debt following reversion, and the city will also agree not to incur any additional debt or encumber further any of the properties that are being conveyed to the county upon reversion.
As for the effective date of reversion, the parties have agreed to allow the Commission on Local Government to review that issue and make a recommendation to the special court. And that is part of the process, and we'll go over the process in a moment. The special court will make the ultimate decision as to the effective date of reversion. The next paragraph deals with annexation. As part of the agreement, under the statute, if we were just to revert and not have an agreement like this one, the city would have a 2-year moratorium on annexation once it became a town. The city agreed to actually extend that moratorium for a total of 10 years from the effective date of reversion. And then there are a series of paragraphs here that deal with what might happen under certain hypothetical circumstances. So that moratorium on annexation is dependent on continued retention of the Henry County Public Service Authority as a customer, obviously one of the largest customers, if not the largest of the city. No initiation or endorsement of Henry County or its agents for the incorporation of any portion of the county as a town. No citizen-initiated annexation that would be endorsed by or supported by the city of Martinsville. That's something that is possible under the code, but obviously under the agreement, the city would not support that. In the event the moratorium is terminated prematurely due to one of the foregoing paragraphs, then the revenue sharing paragraph that we talked about previously would be void, and the city would then be liable for any of that debt that was forgiven on a prorated basis. And then finally, the last paragraph deals with if, assuming the moratorium on annexation remains in place for the full 10-year term, then that revenue sharing agreement arrangement that Jeremy discussed earlier remains in effect forever. With regard to future Board of Supervisor districts and school board districts in the town, one complete seat on both of those bodies will be provided within town limits going forward. Beyond that, the Board of Supervisors will have control of how to apportion the districts in the county as it does now.
With respect to operating schools going forward, both sides agreed that they will work together to apply to the Harvest Foundation for a grant to fund a comprehensive study of the consolidated school system. And then we've listed here the factors that are to be considered as part of this study. educational quality, efficient use of facilities, racial and economic equity, costs, consolidation of administrative functions, academic concerns, student achievement. The VDOE and Board of Education are to be invited to participate in the study. This is something that they have great expertise in. And in the event Harvest Foundation refuses to fund that study, the parties will work together to try to get funding for the study from the legislature. And also, finally, as part of that study process, determining what to do with schools, at least 2 public hearings on that issue will also be held.
The last few paragraphs here address some legalese. 16 is approval, and that's why we're here this evening, is to present this agreement to the 2 governing bodies for their consideration and approval. 17 addresses what I mentioned earlier, the development of a comprehensive agreement based on this MOU. And then 18 deals with arbitration of disputes if any arise as we go through this process.
So that's the basic MOU. It's fairly simple, but addresses all of the major issues that were in dispute at the beginning of this whole process. We wanted to talk very briefly about what happens next, assuming both bodies approve this agreement. Jeremy and I, and the county and city attorneys will be working together to develop and finalize a comprehensive agreement that covers all of this in a more formal way and a more detailed way. That agreement then goes through a process before the Commission on Local Government, who we've been working with throughout this process, for approval. The Supreme Court, Jeremy, you want to cover that one? Supreme Court then appoints 3 circuit judges, none of whom are from this affected region, to make a decision as to whether to approve that agreement upon recommendation of the COLG, Commission on Local Government. And then under the code, after that approval occurs, at least 6 months must pass before the effective date of reversion. So that's the agreement and a summary and the next steps. If you don't mind, I'll take a quick point of personal privilege and say I was unbelievably impressed with the work of those folks who came together, both in the meetings beforehand and in the confidential mediation session. Everyone approached this process, I think, with great goodwill and understanding that the city would soon be part of the county. And that was always in the back of everyone's minds. And having an agreement like this, as opposed to having us fight it out in court, is a much better result, I think, than what we otherwise might have had.
I share those sentiments, and without breaching confidentiality, the mediator mentioned controlling the outcome, and I won't go any further than that, but this gives the bodies an opportunity to control the outcome, and it was a pleasure working with George and Tim and everybody with the city team and Mr. Adams and Ms. Buchanan, trying to develop an agreement that you have before you. And I appreciate your efforts on this and appreciate working with you, and look forward to continuing to work with you as we work through the voluntary settlement agreement.
Likewise.
All right, Eric and George, I suppose y'all may have some comments.
Yes, just briefly to my clients, the members of Martinsville City Council, and as your in-house counsel, I do recommend to you that you approve this agreement. It is one that, in my opinion, is very fair for our citizens. It was fairly negotiated. Your entire negotiation team and the team for the county went to great lengths to reach this agreement. And the fact that we have gotten here after all of the decades that this has been talked about and mulled over and argued over in our community for a very, very long time is truly extraordinary. I will also say that having reached this settlement, I like Jeremy and Stephen both very much. I've known them both for many years, and they're not from here. And had we fought this out in court, only lawyers enjoy going to court. and this would have been a very lengthy, acrimonious, and most importantly, very expensive process for the taxpayers of the city and for the county. And the fact that we are in this together and we're able to come to this agreement has saved all of our people in the city and the county both an extraordinary amount of arguing and acrimony and money. So I do hope that the council will approve this settlement as presented this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, I am recommending the board approve the proposed memorandum of understanding before you today, primarily because it protects county residents, property owners, businesses from the threat of potential annexation by Martinsville until at least 2032. As you heard, there's no agreed date when it would be proposed, but when it would be effective, but we know it'll go 10 years beyond the date of reversion. So absent an agreement with the city not to attempt to annex neighborhoods, businesses, and industries, Martinsville would be able to begin the process of annexation and would expand its borders of the town within starting 24 months after they became a town. Annexation would have a huge detrimental impact on our county and its residents. It would be costly, contentious legal battle before the Commission on Local Government and courts. While the county would have strong arguments to fight proposed annexations, history tells us that towns often get some of what they ask for in almost all cases. Property owners, businesses, and residents in newly annexed areas would pay more taxes than their neighbors just over the town line in the newly expanded town. And the county itself, the county government, would lose revenue. While there is, of course, taxation of personal property and real property, some town taxes completely replace county taxes, and the county would lose revenue at a time when we need to pay for increased services provided to our new town residents. For these reasons, the county mediation team worked to secure a guaranteed period of time where no annexation could be sought. Ultimately, 10 years was the date from the date of reversion is what was agreed upon. In exchange, the county is agreeing to alter two revenue sharing agreements that have existed for many years between the county and the city. The changes in those existing revenue sharing agreements will result in the county sharing 1/3 of tax revenue generated from certain industrial tracts of land with the town of Martinsville, with payments starting in the year reversion is effective. The revenue sharing agreements are contingent on the success of the entire community as a whole. As our industrial base grows, these revenues will grow, and not only will both local governments benefit, but all our citizens will as well. It is certainly the hope of the negotiating team that these revenue sharing agreements are very successful and very lucrative. So successful, we hope that there will never be a need for the town to file annexation and try to expand. Protecting the county from town annexation is not the only benefit of the Memorandum of Understanding. The county is securing low-cost use of Martinsville's facilities that may need to be utilized by the county for a period of time after reversion. That has not been the case in prior reversions. That sometimes has been at great expense to the counties who have to provide services and use facilities in the town. The county is securing ownership of school buildings debt-free so that these buildings can be considered by use for the Henry County Public Schools. The county is saving the costs, as was pointed out by Mr. Monday, of fully litigating this, which would have been very costly, and I would argue ultimately not very successful from the county standpoint. Many items of the Memorandum of Understanding merely recite and memorialize what will happen by operation of law. When Martinsville ceases to be a city, the county becomes responsible for city services such as education, the jail, courts, prosecution of crimes, operation of clerk's offices, registering voters, and conducting elections. These are all expensive services that Henry County will have to provide to its new residents in the town of Martinsville. Henry County has no choice but to take on these services according to the laws of Virginia. One item noticeably missing from the agreement is a date of reversion for the city. The county feels strongly that the transfer of these responsibilities from the city to the county cannot be done in a thorough, thoughtful, and efficient way as it should be, at least until the date of July 1, 2023. That's our position. The city and county ultimately could not agree on a date, but we did agree to allow the Commission on Local Government to make a recommendation, and the special court will ultimately enter an order that will have the effective date. A truth that exists today that existed last September when Henry County was served with the reversion papers is this. The reversion statute in Virginia was created to allow small cities to cease providing expensive services and soon thereafter begin annexing portions of the surrounding counties. There is no incentive for a surrounding county to want this event to occur in its community. What the mediation team did was take this reversion filing and attempt to negotiate a positive outcome, as positive an outcome as possible for our residents and save money on litigation. If the Board of Supervisors approves this MOU, a more detailed contract will be drafted as was outlined and then presented to the Commission on Local Government, who will then, I would point out, the Commission on Local Government will make it available for public hearings and comment because we are participants in there. The decision makers are the Commission on Local Government and the court, and which will ultimately have the final order. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this proposed agreement offers long-term protection from annexation to our citizens and businesses. This agreement also allows this board to control the loss of revenue to the town when the town, as opposed to when the town annexed additional land. And that will help this board confidently budget for its future. This agreement also offers certainty in the reversion process that would not be present if all matters were litigated. For those reasons, I recommend the board adopt this memorandum of understanding.
Okay, at this time, we will have comments from the city council members. Mrs. Pearson, Mr. Turner, if you'll pass it down to Mrs. Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson, and to our Board of Supervisors, thank you all. And thank you for all the hard work you went through with the mediation. I greatly appreciate it. As you all know, I was not on City Council when this vote was made, so I didn't have the opportunity to cast that vote. However, I have been vocal about my concerns. Of course, having businesses in both the county and the city, I have had concerns about taxes, both as a resident and as a business owner. I've also been anxious about the acrimonious relationship with the county because I think outside of Martinsville and Henry County, people look at us as one, and I want to be able to stand as one with the county and put that face forward to for future economic development. And also, I definitely see efficiencies from a services perspective. Anytime you do bring together that, you have the opportunity to have more efficient and productive use of resources as well as our services. I also wanted to say that if this does happen, I do believe that the then town of Martinsville will contribute greatly to the county. And again, we will no longer be separate and instead hopefully standing as one. Finally, I do believe that there are a lot of positives in also combining our school systems. We've talked about that for as long as I've been back to this area. And I definitely see a lot of pros out of that for our children and future generations. The 2032 date of annexation, I know, puts a little fear in our county residents. And I think, again, that gives us the time to build upon our relationships and hopefully move forward again in a positive manner. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Really briefly, Dr. King once said, you can learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or you can perish as fools. I really want to thank the county and all the hard work to the city staff and the county staff for all the hard work you did putting this together. It's really amazing. It had been said before that this would never happen, but cooler heads prevail, and I'm really glad that we're taking this approach. Thank you.
First, I want to thank both negotiating teams. I think they've hammered out a an agreement that's fair for both sides, and they did a great job, and I fully support it. I think there's no wonder there's only one state in the union that has independent cities. I think the concept of independent cities, especially when it gets to smaller cities, that we've outgrown that, and that this may be a template going forward for maybe the other probably 15 independent smaller cities in Virginia that are facing the same problems that the city of Martinsville are having. And I do hope that this will be a template, but also the General Assembly will address some equities and change the law where this will be a whole lot easier process going forward. But I look forward to working with our friends in the county. Look forward to becoming a member of Henry County. And it was just a great job, and I appreciate the work put forth here.
Vice Mayor Bowles.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilman Turner. First and foremost, I would like to thank God for allowing us to be here safely this evening and for the citizens for selecting me to serve. I will forever be humbled and indebted to the citizens of Martinsville. As we all know, the reversion conversation has been discussed since the 70s, before I was even born, before I was even thought of. And I am very thankful and grateful that we were able to work together amongst ourselves in the city council, and that we were able to work with our neighbors, our colleagues, the Board of Supervisors in Henry County. Ultimately, we are here to do what is in the best benefit of our citizens. When you are elected, if you truly care about your constituents, you do not utilize a self-serving agenda. I make decisions that are based on reason, logic, and input from the community. There are times when my personal beliefs have to be set aside to do what's in the betterment for all of our citizens. And I will always do what I believe is best for our citizens. The decision that I'll make tonight was not made lightly. I prayed and sought guidance from the Lord, and I seek to serve Him in all of my endeavors. With any agreement, we know there are pros and cons for both sides. And without disclosing any information, as we have all signed an NDA, our citizens can be reassured that the city negotiated with them at the forefront of their mind. I am always available for any questions, comments from any person that's within my jurisdiction. And let's all continue to work together to build a better future for our next leaders, our children, and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. As an elected official, it is necessary that we look beyond today to make decisions for the betterment of our community as a whole. This decision has not been taken lightly, but a great deal of time, research, discussion, and a lot of effort on the part of the city and the county has occurred. I want to thank our colleagues in Henry County for the time and diligence in all of our decisions. We spent 2 very long days in mediation, but we came out with a successful outcome. Like I said, this has been a very long process for us, and we still have months to go. This is not the end. This is the beginning. To have a united community instead of us and them will help bring continuity to our area, which I believe this will allow us to grow our county and our town. We cannot stand divided. We have to unite. And I think that what we're doing is to unite our community to be a better community as one. And I look forward to standing with my colleagues in Henry County. Thank you. Chairman? No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. We've had that conversation before this meeting. This is a public meeting. It is not a public hearing. We will have a public hearing at a later date.
Okay, at this time, we will take comments from members of the Henry County Board of Supervisors, beginning with Vice Chairman Deborah Buchanan.
Well, as you know, I was part of the negotiating team that worked with Henry County, and I have a somewhat different perspective on what is getting ready to happen. I certainly respect City Council and their members, but I feel like that there are some things that I would like to bring up. I'm sure that each one of us here at this table has been asked similar questions regarding reversion, particularly why can't Henry County residents vote on reversion? The best that I could tell them was I wished I could give you all the details, because as a Henry County taxpayer, you do have a right to know, and not after the fact. But because we are elected, we are bound by laws that prohibit us from talking about details that are discussed in closed session. It's an unfair playing field. Henry County's hands were tied, and I don't think anyone wants to go to battle with their hands tied behind their back. Some people criticized Henry County for adding new industrial parks, for building a new school, for building a new jail. But with every decision came sleepless nights, but we never went out on a limb where we could not find our way back. Even during the tough times, our last recession, NAFTA created a financial burden on our economy, and our unemployment numbers were high. Henry County continued to work. We rolled up our sleeves, we tightened our belts, and we put people back to work. I have said that this community is the little train that could, and we are making strides, slow but sure, to revamp our economy. People work hard all their lives to own a home and to own a piece of land. And if we all live long enough, we will probably experience a decrease in our income. But poor financial decisions should not be passed along to Henry County taxpayers that did not participate in the election process. You have to ask yourself the question, is reversion justified? Is annexation fair? What about double taxation for Henry County and Martinsville city residents? And for city employees, teachers, school employees, law enforcement, constitutional officers, these people that have dedicated their working life to help make Martinsville a better place to live. What about them? Unemployment is real. Now that City Council has chosen the reversion process, do not forget, what's good for Henry County will be good for the citizens of Martinsville. Because with annexation comes hard feelings, additional taxes, and a trust factor that is hard to erase. Henry County cannot stop reversion. The Code of Virginia does not allow it, but a majority of the vote of City Council can. As I said, I was part of the negotiating team, and the Memorandum of Understanding is the best that we can hope for to lessen the pain, because years of court battles will be very time-consuming for our employees and extremely costly for our taxpayers. I'm confident that reversion certainly will not be in the best interest of Henry County, but as always, Henry County, we will deal with the hand we're dealt, and we will make the best of it.
Thank you, Ms. McCannon, for your words that you just said. I've had some sleepless nights the last couple of weeks because I knew this time was coming. Mr. Mundy just said a little while ago that we all are in this together. We are in this together because the fact that the city wants to revert. If the city didn't want to revert, we wouldn't be here today. So I look and ask myself a question. All this is supposed to be betterment for Henry County. Henry County is going to have to take over your school systems. That means we have total control over the school systems. People ask me about school systems in the city. Well, they closed Martinsville High School. That's what people come and ask me. I'm in the county, but they come and ask me, well, we closed Martinsville City High School. Number one, it's not up to us as county supervisors, it's up to our school board when it comes to what school systems will be kept and which ones won't. But I can tell you in Henry County that they closed down Fayetteville Collinsville High School and Lowell Park High School and sent them to Bassett High School, Magna Vista High School, and turned those two schools over to middle school. And they both had students of 600 plus students in those, or more students in each one of those high schools. Well, Martinsville City High School only has about 480, from what I understand, thereabouts, students in the high school. So I asked myself a question, and I asked y'all a question. Magna Vista and both Bassett are not at maximum capacity. They still can absorb students. Would it be not right for the county to absorb these students into Bassett High School, into Magna Vista? They did it from Collinsville. They did it from Lowell Park. There was strife and contentions between parents and the school systems and stuff like that. But after a while, the kids got used to it. Now, my granddaughter graduated from Bassett High School. She would have graduated from Fayetteville Collinsville because that's where they live at. But she graduated from Bassett High School this last graduation. The county will have to take over the school systems, the treasurer's office, commission of revenue, the voting register, jails, corrections, Commonwealth attorneys, social services, health department. We're going to have to sort all these identities in the county. What's this going to cost the county? Well, I can tell you it's going to be, from what we talked about in the county itself, there'll probably be about 10% tax increase in the next coming year budget. Just due to the fact of the uncertainty that we know and the expenses that we're going to have to absorb in taking over all these constitutional offices and the school board systems. Is that fair for the city? I mean, fair for the county that happens? The city. Do you know when you work for the city that you're going to lose your jobs possible the first day of reversion? When the county takes over, there's a possibility that you as city employees will lose your jobs. The county does not guarantee that it will hire anyone from the city. Not to say that we won't hire from the city, because we will. We'll need to fill spots and spaces. But that comes through a process. So ask yourself, am I going to be one of those persons that's going to lose my job when this happens? Am I going to be one of those persons that lives in a city that reverts to a town that's going to have double taxes from the town and the taxes from the county? How's that going to affect me? How's this going to cost me? I'm a businessman in Collinsville. My taxes are going to go up. Every year, some of my taxes go up. It never stops, up and up and up. Beside the point. You heard them talk about, Deborah's talked about, Ms. Buchanan talked about building a new jail and a new school. This didn't come easy. This didn't come easy to me. It didn't come easy to any one of the council, any one of the board of supervisors here. Especially the jail. I think we was really opposed to building that jail. But we looked at the need for the jail system in Henry County. Our jail system is dilapidated. It's horrendous. It's terrible. So we decided to build a jail that would house 400 people, 400 beds in the new jail. As of today, Henry County's got about 305 inmates, which about 112 of those inmates are outsourced to different areas. Even Martinsville City houses some of the county prisoners right now, at a cost of about $1 million a year to the county. Is what it's costing the county, about $1 million to outsource those inmates. So we can bring all those inmates back and put them in our new jail and save that $1 million, which would help offset some of the debt services that we have in the new jail. But having to take over the city's inmates, which right now is about 179, would max out our new jail. We discussed in length when we built this jail about how we would take the extra bed space that we had in our jail cells and bring people in from other counties into our jail. We would house other prisoners and possibly even take federal inmates in that are low risk. And then that way we would have revenue coming in to our jail system that would help offset the cost of our jail. But all that's gone. All that is gone. We can't do that now. I look at this, I understand what the memorandum of understanding is. I've read this thing time after time after time. I've read it. A little information that I got here that the county's got out. It says, without the memorandum of understanding, Martin City could have annexed as soon as 2024. So we agree that if we decided that we didn't want to have this annexation, we voted against it, that it's possible that the city could annex within a 2-year period. Of course, we know that probably won't happen because of the legal battles and expense of everything that would go and the time period that would take to get to it. But eventually it would get there. And as soon as it had the opportunity to revert, that you would probably start annexing in 2 years. So of course they worked out the deal that where it gives us 10 years from the date of reversion. So from that point, I don't know how many people in here is my age, but it looks like right many are. I've been on this board almost 12 years, and this 12 years has flew by like, bam. I'm telling you, it's flown by. Are you telling me in 10 years that the city will have the right to annex our property? Have a right to come and take our property that we have worked so hard for in Henry County to keep? You're going to come and take our property? You're going to come and take Virginia Avenue? You're going to come and take the racetrack, our industrial parks? A little information that I got here says annexation begins in 2 years, would have substantial negative effects on the county residents and businesses, including double real estate taxation for the county residents and businesses within the annex area. These areas most likely would have included our business park, other properties in those areas. The new town would also collect 100% of the county revenue from business, professional, occupational, BPOL taxes, utility taxes, meals and beverage taxes, and lodging taxes in the annex areas. The city can go 10 miles outside of Henry County borderlines and annex out 10 miles out. Of course, I would think that this would probably be another legal battle that would be probably up against in 10 years, because I'm sure that who is ever sitting in my seat in 10 years would definitely don't want to have their town where it's annexed. So it says, given the time frame, it is conceivable Martinsville could annex twice by the year 2032, which the city has the right to do is annex twice. So it says without the memorandum, we could spend the next 5 to 6 years in court. And I do understand that. And it is expensive. There's nothing that anybody wants to see is two bulls butt heads and spending money. But this memorandum of understanding, I understand it 100%. And I can tell you that there's 5 council members here today and 1 new one that did not vote for it. But you have put yourself in control of from 65 to 70,000 people. I have talked to number of county people and city people, not nowhere near like the counties. 90% of the one that I've talked to don't understand the full scale of this reversion because it hadn't been brought public, but they don't understand the scale of this reversion. But they do understand they don't want to reverse it because they don't want to see their taxes go up on their property because taxes keep going up. They don't want to see it. We in Henry County pride ourselves on keeping our taxes low. I just don't know what to say. I just asked y'all to think about what you're doing when you do it. Your city residents, some 70-75% of your city residents don't want it. I don't know if you brought this to a vote or even asked your city residents what they think about it. You 5 people are making this decision for the whole county and the city. That's all I got to say about it.
Well, I've prayed that this day never come because I approached this situation wearing 2 hats. As a county representative and as a former city employee for 30 years. And listening to Jennifer say, you know, before she was born, I was working for the city when it was talked about. I went to work in '66 out of high school and worked 30 years for the city. My dad worked 25 years before that for the city. He come to work for the city when I was starting in elementary school. And there's been a slaughter employed by the city up until today. My son, when this goes into effect, it's at the school system, will be one of them ones that Joe was talking about that's going to be knocking on Sandy's door trying to get a job because he's been in the system about 23 years and he's 46 years old. So he's got to have a job because he's got $2 to educate. And I know it's been talked about as Ms. Sievert and I was referring to it earlier, that back ever since I can remember. But I think because of the population of the city then, the pride in the school system, you know, I've always lived in the county, but both of my children graduated from Orangeville High School. And I graduated from Drury Mason High School. So, you know, that was a clash in itself. But I would never been so prouder when my daughter marched out on that field over there playing that saxophone that was almost as big as she was. But, you know, that didn't bother me, that it was red and it wasn't black and white from Drury Mason, because I'm going to be like, the Bulldogs are going to be like I am now. I drive by Drury Mason. It's still an elementary school, but it's not a high school. It's not a Spartan. So, you know, it's going to be the same situation. All the history and everything that all these coaches have done over at Ben Ramsey Field, Cleveland Avenue, in a gym on Martin, Commonwealth Boulevard, you know, it's going to be all null and void. But, you know, I look at this memorandum of understanding and I think it's probably the best that we can do. Because like you said, the playing field is not level, that's for sure. And I have nothing against anything. I used to get so upset hearing people talk about it. I said, you know, I don't have to go through no iron gates, no checkpoints or nothing going from home to work or work to home. But some people, you know, referred to it as almost like totally different countries almost, to the city and the county. But I never saw it that way. And I don't think the most of us that worked there, that lived in the county, I worked with Jennifer's granddaddy a long time. And he was one of those ones that, where do you tell people you're from when they ask you? Do you tell them you're from Henry County or do you tell them you're from Martinsville? And I said, Pete, I tell them I'm from Martinsville because that's a reference point. Yeah, I know it, but you ought to be telling them you're from Henry County because that's where you live and that's what you ought to be proud of. Because he was definitely a proud supporter of the sports in Martinsville. But, you know, it is what it is. I know NAFTA has thrown them a curve just like it throwed us a curve. But, you know, we're scratching, trying to get back. And we don't have no option in Henry County to put our monkey on somebody else's back. We've got to bear up and tote the burden. And now it looks like we're going to be toting both burdens. So, but we'll get by, we'll do it. We have survived and we'll keep going with it. So, thank you.
I just have a few points and I'll keep my comments brief. I'm sure my counterparts have already hit on most of the stuff I'm going to say, but I think it's worth repeating. First and foremost, Henry County cannot stop reversion. The Code of Virginia does not allow the county any say on whether reversion happens. All that is required by the Virginia Code is a majority vote by City Council. Henry County's tried on many occasions over the last few years to have the legislation changed by the General Assembly to make the process of reversion either require a referendum or to level the playing field, but that legislation has failed to receive a serious look by the General Assembly. Without the negotiated agreement, as been stated before, the new town could annex portions of the county after 2 years and potentially annex up to 2 times within the 10-year moratorium that was established within the agreement, which is effective the date to be set by the Commission on Local Government, since we couldn't agree on a date during negotiations. As stated before, Henry County must take over the following regardless of any agreement: city schools, jails and corrections, treasurer's office, commissioner of revenue, voting registrar, Commonwealth attorney, social services, and the health department. Even without agreement, we'd have to take that regardless. We'd probably also get the debt. We'd probably also have to pay for the buildings. So in my mind, the agreement is most likely in the best interest of Henry County. Since there will no longer be a Martinsville City school system or Martinsville City government, the town will likely have a smaller staff because of the obligations it's giving up. That said, there's no guarantee that any city employee or teacher will be hired by the county. I think to try to have reversion done in a year would not be in the best interest of the citizens of the city of Martinsville or the county when it comes to trying to consolidate schools, consolidate jail, consolidate the elected positions. I think the process is going to take at least 2, possibly 3 years just to do right by the citizens of both governing bodies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Martin.
So in the beginning, there was the county of Henry and the city of Martinsville. And on December 10th, 2019, the City Council of Martinsville took a vote to revert to town status. It is unimaginable to me that 5 individuals in less than a minute vote could impact the financial well-being of 64,000 individuals. The financial well-being refers to a substantial tax increase for the 64,000 city and county residents. In other words, the county estimates a $3 million deficit, which will require a 10-cent tax increase. This could also lead to cut services, elimination of personnel, and an increase in taxes, or a combination of any of these, if not all three. This consideration to revert is based on, paraphrased greatly by me, the city can no longer afford to continue to provide services to its residents at current levels. Now, I was once of the mind that the city was in financial trouble, which necessitated this extreme action of reversion. Quite the contrary. My eyes were opened in a review of the 2019 audit with the following facts. Fact 1, Martinsville's unassigned fund balance exceeds 10% of the state policy requirement. Fact 2, the fund balance from 2010 to 2019 suggests a median final budget use of $1.8 million. But the reality is only $300,000 was a median use over the same 9-year period of time. Fact 3, property taxes have been stable over the last 9 years. Fact 4, sales and use tax show modest growth. Fact 5, meals tax has grown over the last 9 years. Fact 6, Martinsville's total expenditures per capita are in line with cities of comparable populations like Galax, Colonial Heights, Bristol, Manassas Park, Franklin, and Poquoson. Fact 7, Martinsville general government debt per capita are on the low end of the spectrum with the same city group. Fact 8, Martinsville spends more per capita for education services, but let me come back to this one. So here lies my confusion as to the why of reversion. It appears to me that these facts that the city is financially viable and does really not need to revert. Also, as a former school superintendent for 20 years, I always try to involve individuals with a major decision. My heart is saddened because the state does not allow the citizenry to have a voice in the reversion process. We have not been able to share the discussions until there was something for the citizens to react to. Thus, tonight, you are getting to see the results of the mediation. But let me also share, this state design process is akin to the county having their hands tied behind their backs and walking into a dark room and expecting a positive outcome for our citizenry. The county has little to no control over what happens with this reversion. Make no mistake, I will be voting for this agreement. To not vote for this agreement would mean a legal battle costing the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I believe there's an alternate to reversion, given that the audit reflects the city is financially viable. Earlier in my remarks, I stated that the city spends more in education than counterpart cities. I have suggested this many times, but I believe if the city relinquishes control of the school system to the county, it could save approximately $7 million annually. This is not a foreign idea. I thought this would be a course of action when I was superintendent in Henry County in the late 90s. But more recently, Mr. Jim Adams, chairman of our Henry County Board of Supervisors, sent a letter to City Council suggesting a study for this action on December 3rd, 2019. Now back to the reversion process. Did you know the city council can withdraw its request for reversion up to 21 days following the court order. So it's not over until it's over. Citizens, let city council know how you feel. Will Martinsville stay a city without limits, or will it become a town with limits?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the citizens for their patience during this process, along with the media. I know that there have been questions that you would like answers to, and no one would have loved to have shared it more than both council and the Board of Supervisors. So again, thank you for your patience. I'd also like to thank the staff of specifically Henry County, its administrator, deputy administrator, along with the financial team for the work that they've placed into this. And I know equally as much that same level of work has gone on in the city. To the constitutional officers in both city and county, there have been many, many questions, and rightfully so. Thank you again for your patience during this, and hopefully some of what has been covered tonight gives you some confidence going forward. Not all dire straits in this. The employees of both systems, Henry County Public Schools and its staff, its financial staff. We have some of the board members here tonight, as well as some of the school board members of the city. Thank you for your interest in this as well. The mediation team, we actually had one change when there was a change of vice mayor. And so Councilman Martin participated in some early discussions. It all didn't come down to 2 days of mediation. This long before we started the process of it being known of reversion, I went back just out of curiosity and looked into some budget books that I have every budget book from the time that I ran for office a long, long time ago. The first budget book was actually the 2002 budget, but I ran for office in 2001. Going back, and it's easy to say over the last couple of years, the word reversion was mentioned in almost every budget document, at least going back 16 years. And prior to that, the statement made in one of the budget books was, we can't continue to run dual services. The previous year, the same thing. Going way, way back to the first budget book, I looked, and of course, that was a 2002 budget. There was a statement in there that said, this figure is alarming at best. And it was the state of Henry County's financial status at that time. The overall amount of money that we had in the neighborhood of $5-6 million total, with all of that committed either through industrial development or with the exception of about 700,000. Alarming would be what most any locality. We're healthy. We're in the 40+ million as far as our fund balance now. It's a record that has steadily grown. We've set some parameters that we will not go below. We met with about 3 years ago with the financial institutions in New York, and they were extremely pleased with the management of the county resources. I see among our folks, other than staff, former Mayor, the Honorable Mayor Green, and these discussions were held a long, long time ago as to where would it head? How did we get here? It is without question almost like an unfunded mandate the way the state has allowed us to be here. The state did not fix what could have been fixed a long time ago. And we're not talking about either side lobbying legislators. We're talking about, it's almost like just, we won't do anything and let's just see what the outcome is going to be. It's unfair to all. It's unfair to make the painful decisions that city council has had to make along with the county. It's not an easy task, as both sides will say, to deal with. It causes emotional stress, bitterness, anger, mistrust, all of the things that kind of come along with that. But both parties have done their due diligence. It didn't start again with the vote to take reversion. That due diligence had gone on many, many years ago when there were discussions of what could we do as a possibility for combining school systems? How favorable would that be? So there's been many, many years of time and investment by numerous people, both in this room and that have gone on. One other thing that happened in 2002, and we were going through a fair amount of distraction, so I didn't pick up on the date of it at that time. May 4th, 2002, there was a document written, and I'll just title it the Summerlin Thesis. Benny Summerlin, as part of his thesis to complete educational requirements, had wrote a document, some 40-some pages long. I won't summarize all of it, but I want to hit the highlights of a couple things. And it had to do with city reversions in the state of Virginia. Page 6, an excerpt from it. State favors cooperation rather than competition. Page 19, shifting of costs for the education, human service needs, significant cost associated with the constitutional offices being moved. Page 32, regardless of reversion, if reversion is contested or a voluntary settlement, both the city and county should do their best to negotiate the terms of and conditions. Page 37, to avoid litigation at all costs. Gave an example. South Boston, Halifax, approximately $3 million in cost. That was $2002. I'll let you kind of roll that forward. What would that mean today? That was the cost of the battle that they fought. Certainly there are losses. The city will experience loss of one of the most high-profile things that any municipality or county government would have, and that's public education system. There will be some uncertainty as we roll forward as far as taxes. There's concern, as with all citizens, and whether it be city or county, as to the underserved, the minority, whatever you have, who falls through the cracks and is not protected. And certainly those things would be addressed. This memorandum of understanding, I like to think of it as like a skeleton outline. It is the basis for where we can at least come together and then add and flesh this out as you will. Certainly, it's not a perfect document. Both sides had to give. Both sides did give. I do appreciate the comments from city attorney that that we came together and agreed, those representing the city and as well as the county, that we at least listened. And it wasn't an easy process. There were some things that particularly neither party wanted to have a part of what the other had. And so some things got weeded out pretty quickly. With cooperation, it can go beyond the fact that we can just see the good and goodwill. The their, THEIR, on either side becomes ours for both sides. It's not theirs. They can't say that. We can't say that about them. It's ours to deal with. We can agree going forward to work on long-term solutions together. This will, as opposed to a fight, help us to secure our position with business recruitment, people that we want to move to the area to support our businesses and the workforce. It will help us to maintain a great reputation as a locality. And as someone mentioned, possibly used as a template going forward for others to emulate. Each other's success is all of our success. Thank you.
Now we will consider the proposed memorandum of understanding. Do we have a motion from City Council?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the memorandum of understanding with Henry County.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Clark? We're going to call the roll, or is this a voice vote? We'll do roll call. Yes.
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 Likewise, Board of Supervisors, you've had the opportunity to review this. You've had, as mentioned, numerous occasions for discussion, both on the financial implications, all the way back to a forensics analysis that was done by Jeremy Carroll's team. And we do appreciate that, at least put information in our hands as well. In regards to the memorandum of understanding, what is the pleasure of this board? We have a motion by Dr. Martin, a second by Mr. Zaire. Is there any discussion? By a raise of hands, all in favor? And opposed? Let the record show that it was 4-2 vote. With that, I don't know of any other items of business. I will call for adjournment, a motion to adjourn from the Henry County Board of Supervisors. We have a motion second. All in favor? It is 6-0.
Call for a motion to adjourn Martinsville City Council.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you so much for letting us know the mic's on.